Curiosity Solution. I'm your host, Beverly Beal. Join us as we explore the science of curiosity, share stories of people who've used curiosity to improve their lives, and maybe inspire some aha moments along the way. Welcome to the Curiosity Solution. Today's guest is Paul Michael Raspa Jr. That is a little bit of a mouthful, but you know what? When you got so many different talents, you got to have a name that can be substantial enough to hold it all. So Paul and I met probably back in 2017 when we were both working at a co-working space here in the Austin, Texas area. Since then, he has relocated to the Phoenix area, Arizona. Um, but one of the things that interested me about bringing him onto this podcast is essentially he embodies curiosity. You are a master at looking at a situation from multiple different perspectives with many different mindsets in order to help people come up with really novel solutions. And since I do similar stuff myself, it's like, ooh, a kindred spirit. So absolutely had to have you on. So thank you, Michael. Paul, I look at your middle name there. It's like, where did Michael come from? But Paul, thanks so much for joining me here today.
It's great to be here, Beverly.
So tell me a little bit about your relationship with curiosity and how your your current profession, you're like, what are you doing now? How did where did you start? Because again, for the viewers, listeners, I have a set of questions that I always ask to for every guest. And you're the first person who's actually died on me before.
Well, we'll get to that story in a second. But really, curiosity for me is one of those things that was put in a box. I was told from the time I was young, you're not very creative. Curiosity and creativity and kind of this whole notion of building and being is something that other people do. Not you, not us, not who our family is. And I was really kind of stifled in many ways there. And so I used my brain a ton. I'm a very analytical thinker. I'm a high organizer, and I use those to my advantage all the time. But when it comes to being creative, quite frankly, well into my 40s, I was still thinking I'm not creative. Like if people said, "Are you creative?" No, would be my answer. I'm not crafty. I don't build stuff. I don't design things. But then as I got older, I realized, wow, I actually do. I use different vocabulary for it, but I do. And I think that's part of the beauty of curiosity is that we're able to look at things through a different lens. And that I'm actually really good at, even if it doesn't fit into the nice little box that so many other people talk about when it comes to creativity and curiosity and intrigue and all those pieces. So for me, growing up, I was taught use your brain, stay in your box, do the work. As I've gotten older, I found, gosh, life is a playground, or maybe a better analogy, life is a soccer field for me. And so you can get out there and you can play the game and have to adapt to all the different moves and the different ways of being, have to interact with all the other players, deal with referees, hear the noise of the fans, balls coming at you, sending balls out, kicking and throwing and all these other pieces. Or you can just be in the sidelines, or even worse, up in the stands. While each of those has a role, intrigue, curiosity, this sense of building, creating, it's really about understanding that you can be in all those places all the time. Like you can be on the field, you can be on the sideline, you can be in the stands, and you can make something out of that. And that's really what I've tried to do, particularly over the last 10 to 15 years of my life and in my career, is really be able to look at things and say, what happens if you see that field? Can you look at it from a different angle? Can you move yourself out of the picture just a little bit, look at it a different way, zoom back in, jump back out there on the field, come back out to the sideline? Can you do all those pieces over and over and over? And if you can, it makes for a really beautiful sense of curiosity.
Some people might listen to that and go, wow, he is actively disassociating all the time. But no, I
Yes, but yes and no. I mean, it is a disassociative sort of piece. It's really a zoom in and zoom out sort of piece. And it's that ability to look at something and say, that's out in front of me. How can I look at it from above? How can I look at it from the side? How can I look at it from below? It's still the same piece. It may not even be moving. That situation, that circumstance, that object, that problem, it may not actually be moving at this moment. But if we can move ourselves to look at it, that creates curiosity. And that's the
yeah.
part that.
Well, and that's also how you get to innovation. That's how you get the solutions you need. Now, again, I think this is so important to acknowledge that again, we are in a year that the Yang Wood Dragon year is all about goal setting. It's about looking at things from all of those multiple perspectives. It is just juicy with creativity. Um, and making sure that it's you're coming from it to it from a place of integrity because dragons do not do well with people who are not in alignment with integrity, which again is something that, based on your background, I feel like you've got a really good, strong handle on that because uh, your that ability to look from different perspectives. So I kind of was kidding about the whole disassociative thing, although there are some folks that just cannot grasp that when it's time to take a fresh look at things. That's why it's so important to bring people onto your team who have these novel ways of looking at things, because otherwise you end up, getting the same thing all the time because you who's it Einstein that said you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem in the first place?
Yes,
Something to that
yes,
effect?
yes.
So so who are you so how are you so you've got this you're on the soccer field, you're bouncing all over the place, with the hopefully there's somebody bringing juice boxes and orange slices at the end. Um, but so so let's talk a little bit more. It sounds like you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs, you're very entrepreneurial yourself. What else are you how else are you working with this way of the things? And are you gracing other companies with this mindset piece? Or are you strictly working just for yourself?
Definitely gracing others, actually gracing others more than myself on a lot of this. Um, Part of my background is really diverse. I've worked in a lot of different industries over the years. I've had a lot of different roles. And so I'm one of those folks that's kind of really wide, but not so deep on certain subject matters. There are definitely ones that I'm a deep expert, but I have a lot of breadth to what I've done. And part of what that has allowed me to do is figure out how to ask good questions, good probing questions to pull apart a problem, to pull apart a situation. um, Historically, in the business world, I've been brought in when there's really messy problems. We're stuck. We have a product or a project that has collapsed. We are up against the wall and don't know where to go. We've got issues out the wazoo, and we just don't know how to even get our head around it. Those are the situations that over the last 30 years I've been brought into time and time again, often in subject matter areas that I have no clue about anything. A good example of that would be when I went to work in pharmaceutical for about 2 years. I knew nothing about that space. And I was thrown in, didn't even understand the vocabulary. And that's part of the beauty of it at times, is being the outsider and being able just to keep asking the questions. Why is it this way? How did it get this way? Is that important to you? What does that mean for other people? Is that still a problem today? Do you see that being a problem in the future? Where's the biggest asset? And so I go in with folks, sometimes with their life, but more often with their business, and say, how can we kind of pull it all apart, understand what we have, put all the pieces out there, and then say, okay, now that we've got that, what do we want to do with it? How can we build something out of it? How can we innovate to
Mhm.
create something new, something better, something that actually fulfills the goals and objectives that we set out for in the first place? How can we do that together? And then I help people put the plans and the pieces together. So whether that's a small business that's just getting started, or an existing business that has done well but now is not doing well. Often I work with entrepreneurs that have had amazing success, and then all of a sudden they're in a predicament where they're not sure how they even got here. Like things were going great and now they're not. Or now I feel stuck, or now I have great success in this area and I'm failing in this area over here. I've been able to come in and help people pull those pieces apart, assess them, put them back together in a new way, and then say, now that you've got them put together, how do you make them go from good to great?
Mhm. As you're talking about, the going into someplace where you're not unfamiliar with an industry or unfamiliar with the vocabulary, um, it's having that fresh set of eyes that, where you aren't tainted by tradition. And one of the challenges I see with people, again, around curiosity too, and just in general, is so much of our daily lives are based on the same thing. I've got to have,
Mhm.
the same thing for breakfast. I've got to have the same, we do things the same way. We drive the same route to work. And we get in these grooves, in these ruts. Um, and it's hard to break out of that because, and for some people, it's so triggering to have those daily routines questioned, let alone changed. How do you deal with the antagonism of people? Like when you do go into, or do you face antagonism, like when you go into these places and you're asking all these questions and you're saying, but that's not working, so we need to change that. And they're going, but that's how we've always done it. How do you enroll them in your vision?
For sure. This is the problem individually as well as collectively for an organization. And whether that's an organization of one or two or an organization of 500, we have those same pieces. At a biological level, we actually have different neural pathways in our brain that create myelin sheaths, which is kind of tunnels, if you will, fortified tunnels that say this is the pattern, this is the express way that we handle this set of thoughts, this set of behaviors. And so it's not just, oh, I'm just by default doing X, Y, or Z. It's actually how we're built at that moment. Like it's actually ingrained in us. To change those pathways in ourselves takes a lot of effort, a lot of intentionality.
Hmm.
To do it with a whole organization is manyfold more than that, 5x, 10x more. And so making those changes, if we assume that it's going to be easy, we're probably setting ourselves up for a world of hurt. But if we say, gosh, this is probably going to be challenging, but I know that we can do it, that shifts the game.
Hmm.
And so I go into it really with this sense of innocence, but also kind of an antagonism at the problem. Not so much at the people, but at the problem.
Ah, that's a
And
great,
be able to go
great
to battle with it.
clarification. Yeah, you're not going to battle with the people, you're going to battle, at the problem.
But if you can poke at it all those different ways, then we get to start to say, what's the purest pieces of this?
Mhm.
What's the fluff? Why is it like that? Why is a beautiful question when it comes to curiosity. It's not so we often go to right to the what. This is what the problem is. Often it's this is how we got here or when we got here. Okay, that's important data points. Why is it that way? How do we want it to be? And what do we really desire? Like this desire piece is essential for creating change. And often we actually desire for things to stay the same. We don't say that. We're like, oh, I love change, I want something different. The reality is, as humans, we like things to be the same. We like the default. We like mediocrity, if we're honest, because it doesn't take as much effort, doesn't take as much thought, doesn't take gumption. But
I
when we
think
have people that push on those edges for us and make us have to start looking at it, make us have to start questioning why, make us answer the question, what is it that you really want? Like deep down, what is it that you want inside? It makes us a little uncomfortable, but that's actually where the best stuff comes from, in my opinion.
Well, the more I learn about the Enneagram, the more I kind of identify as a 9 with an 8 wings. So for those who are not so familiar, the 9 is more of the peacemaker energy, but the 8 wing is that antagonist. And so I definitely don't fit that more, complacent 9 person, nice 9 energy. Um, but I think it's the one of the most important questions I've been asking myself is why do I desire certain things? Not necessarily just what do I want, but why do I want it? What part of my upbringing, what part of my, genetic encoding of societal cues and pressures are behind the, well, why do I want that? So when I think about certain trends, just something as simple as those Stanley water bottles, that was just nuts how some people were just going absolutely crazy. And I kept thinking, well, but why? Why do you and I understand what you want. I understand that you want this item, but why? Do you already have a water bottle? Is it functional? What's the point? I mean, anyway, so I don't tend to get into a lot of the trends because I'm always asking myself that, well, but why is that a big deal? Is this going to benefit me down the road? So again, when you're talking about it from your perspective, though, from when you're talking with these clients and with these companies, even internally, how often does that become the sticking point or the place where it's that, oh, maybe we don't need that? We're just doing something because we're told that that's what we're supposed to do? Because like you said, mediocrity, there's nothing wrong with that. That's why it's the median. Not everybody can be excellent.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to motive. Why do we do
Mm,
what we do? And kind of at a base level, we want to make sure that we survive as humans. That's hardwired into us to provide for our own base needs, our survival. The challenge is once we have that base level met, we tend to do the same thing for the next level, which then doesn't serve us as well.
mhm,
We get into the what's in it for me sort of mode. And we often apply that across all domains. And it's important to know, why am I doing this? What's in it for me? But more importantly, what's in it for them? How does this move the ball for beyond me, for beyond this lifetime, beyond what we were put here to do at a real fundamental level? And I think back to a song that came out back in the early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s. There was a Christian song that said that there was more to this life than living and dying, more than just trying to make it through another day.
mm,
And I think so many of us show up that, oh, it's in what's in it for me. What legacy am I going to leave? What am I going to get out of this? The real beauty is the gratitude part of saying, one, I'm receiving a heck of a lot in this lifetime. I am truly blessed by the people, the circumstances, the resources that are in front of me. And I'm called to be that steward that then uses them to change this life, to make this place better than when we started out.
mhm.
And it's that filling the gap of where we are to where we want to be that drives us and creates duty in us. But it's also what fuels the curiosity and the innovation side. It's that gap that fills the pain. So even when we're like curious, I wonder what it's like to get to the top of that mountain. I want to go hiking. It's the curiosity that fills the gap. Well, the pain is I don't feel like I can see enough. I don't feel like I can be as expansive. But if I get to the top of that mountain, I'll have a new perspective. So it fills the pain. The curiosity fills the pain, fills the gap of where we are to where we want to be. The same is true in business. The same is true in health. It's like that curiosity fuels, here's where I am, here's where I want to be. But if I want to be there so that I can be more, so that I can do more in service to others, then it just starts multiplying all over the place.
Well, because then as you're going on that in the dash, because there's always see on tombstones, is born and die, death, but it's the life is in the dash. Um, and so when you're talking about that, the curiosity filling the pain, um, I think people also forget that there can be a lot of pleasure in going from where you were or where you are right now to where you're going. Because everything exists upon a spectrum, and I've really had to work hard to shift the what I'm noticing. And so like you're talking about the gratitude, what is it that you're grateful for? How are you, maybe your life purpose was simply to be super kind to the cashier because everybody else has been kind of a grumpy butt. I mean, I'm not saying that that's all we're here for, but it is about um being that blessing, being that light, showing others, showing up for yourself, but also making sure that you're not having to climb on top of others in order to get to that next level, because I think that's unfortunately what happens with a lot of people. They get into that scarcity mentality. Now, how do you help your clients get curious about how they can overcome that scarcity mindset of, well, if I don't take this, somebody else is going to get it. If I don't steal that client, um, then they're going to go someplace else.
There's a fundamental notion that you have to embrace in order to get out of scarcity, which is there are plenty of resources out there.
Hmm.
That's the fundamental piece. If you believe there's not enough, then there's not enough. If you believe that there is plenty and it is my opportunity, my responsibility to utilize that, to maximize that, to share that, to be a great steward of that, then the money comes, the opportunities come. And it is something that's countercultural. We live in a Western society that says me, 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 me. Look at me, give to me, let me take. And so it is a countercultural piece. It's also where when we're able to make that shift and look at it through the lens of there's plenty, and because it starts to multiply, we have the opportunity to be more fulfilled. There's been
Hmm.
many people that I've worked with over the years, high profile folks to folks that nobody's ever heard of and everything in between, where they're like, I've amassed money. I've got a huge house. I've got great cars. I've got multiple commas in my bank account. And yet they say, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel like I have anything. I feel empty, even though I've got this whole laundry list of stuff that I've accumulated. And while on Instagram or at a certain event, people might point at you and say, gosh, you've got everything. I want to be like them. I want the stuff. It's not only having the external, it's having the internal. And
Yep.
scarcity is all about internal.
Hmm.
And so it's that question for us. How you asked, how do we look at that through a different lens? I think it's about reminding ourselves, what are the triggers? What are the reminders for ourselves that we've got plenty, that we've got enough, that there's lots out there. And sometimes it's little triggers that do that. And sometimes it's big triggers. For some people, it's I've got to drive the certain car. I've got to live in a certain size house. I've got to wear a certain brand of clothes. For other people, it's I've got to have this much money sitting in my bank account to remind themselves that they've got enough. But a lot of it comes down to how do you look out? How do you create that lens for yourself? And it's something you have to be conscious of. I don't think in our modern society, especially given these devices that remind us of what we're not all day, every day. I'm not them. I don't have what they have. I don't have the opportunities that they have. It's easy to lose that focus. So it's about moving your focus back to what you do have, expressing that gratitude, and that squelches a lot of that scarcity. And sometimes, like I said, it's the little pieces. Like one of the things that I've learned about how do I deal with my own scarcity at times, because as a serial entrepreneur, And having worked in a lot of industries, my bank account goes rather plentiful at times and it is rather lean at times, often for months at a time. And so when we're in those lean periods, it's easy to be like, oh, let's go to victim. Let's pull back. Let's hold back. Let's say that we don't have much. We don't have anything even. We do, even in those moments. And the more that we keep our perspective to the expanding, then we actually expand. So one of the tricks that I've learned from myself, and I wish I had it sitting here, but it's sitting over across the room. But in my wallet, I carry around $100 bill in there at all times. I hardly ever use cash in this
You know what?
lifetime.
That's funny because we
But
that's a habit that we also got together. In fact, we encourage our kids, even though they're not doing, they're in their late 20s. We always encourage them to carry around their emergency 100 because you never know. It's that security. You've got it, and it's that because and there have been times when I've had to pull it out. Because but yeah,
that
that abundance, it's just I kind of just forget it that it's there, but your subconscious never forgets.
I actually put that $100 bill very prominently inside my wallet so that every time I reach inside my wallet, even to get my credit card out or my debit card out, I still see that bill. And it's the trigger to remind me I have all that I require for this day.
Mhm.
Because I know if I had to, with that $100, I could actually provide for myself and my family probably for about a week if I had to. Trust me, there's days that we spend hundreds of dollars in a day, or thousands even. But in that moment, if I had to, I could stretch that $100. So it's the trigger for me that I got all that's required if I had to. And I think that's part of it with the scarcity is if we can change that fear into a powerful piece of saying, I've got what I require. Now I can go build. Now I can go create. Now I can go share and serve others. Then the scarcity is limited in us. I don't want to say it ever goes away. It should be there. It's probably a helpful motive for a lot of us to get
Mhm.
up out of bed, to do the work, to provide for our families, to do all those things. But also allowing it to not cripple us, to not paralyze us, to not stop us in those moments is important.
So, a lot of what you're saying here, kind of has some echoes in what I would call prosperity gospel type stuff. The law of attraction, things like that. There's a lot of ways of spinning that. I know that you've had a significant chunk of your life was spent in Christian ministry. Um, I personally have a little bit of a challenge with the some like the Joel Osteens of the world. I know they have a great message. They've built an amazing community. They've done some good things. Um, I personally am challenged with those who amass great fortunes, essentially, while there could be more of that spreading, that generosity that goes out. Um, how do you view that as because like what I'm hearing you're saying you're such a from the heart person that I will give you the shirt off my back. Okay, I'm gonna be cold for a little bit, but I got another shirt at home. Um, but some of these other people that I see out there that are feeling kind of empty, the ones that are, I've got all the stuff why what is it that you see that could be a big message for those who may not necessarily be at that level, but they're starting to get a lot of stuff and they're going, well, I my house is getting kind of full. Again, from a feng shui perspective, I always look at as people are just getting more and more and more, it's their subconscious trying to fill that hole, which you talked about earlier. So, I'm looking at it from that perspective of, okay, so where is it in your system, in your psyche, in your belief system that says you're not complete until you've achieved, all of these little boxes that have been ticked off? Um, how does that in your practice, um, I guess what I'm asking is, is that this kind of a similar stuff that you're talking about too, or am I losing the
It
thread?
is. It is in some ways. So if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have come from my kind of self-righteous version of Paul that would have been like, they're a bad person. They're a shallow person. They should be doing X, Y, and Z. That's what
Okay.
I would have told you 10 years ago. Where I'm at today in life, one, I'm grateful that they are who they are because they're expressing who they are. Good, bad, and ugly. They're expressing that. And in doing so, they teach me a lot about myself. They teach me a lot about society. They teach me about what I want, what I don't want. So there's a lot less envy, jealousy, judgment. There's still always
Mm.
judgment present, but it's not as prominent in my thought pattern because I realize that they are doing and being just what they're supposed to be doing and being in this moment. The question is, could they be more? Could they do more? And often we have to go through the steps. Sometimes we have to amass abundant opportunities. We have to put the dollars in the bank. We have to have the brands in order to feel complete because it fills some void. And in order to get to that next level, sometimes we have to do that step. And for some people, that's a big step. I'm thinking in particular, I have a client right now who having the stuff is really, really important to them. And they've done very, very well. Even though they're in their early 30s, they have done immensely well from a business perspective in this life. The house, the cars, the trips, the stuff, the jewelry, they've got it all. They look great. They look great online as well. And yet they're like, I've got all this stuff, but,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, so having all that stuff got you to this point to be able to realize there might be something more to this life. There might be something more that you desire, but it's a sequence, it's a progression. And if we can accept that as, okay, this is what it took to get here. Now, where do I want to go and redirect that energy? Then we get to say, does that continue to serve me going forward? And and it may or it may not, or some portion of it may or may not. And that's constantly what we have to be asking ourselves. Why do we do what we do? Does that serve me? Does that get me closer or farther away from the version of me, the version of my business, from the purpose that I have? Are we moving toward it or further from it?
So so one of the other questions that that's a great answer. Thank you for that. Um, One of the other questions that I like to ask all of my guests is, where does curiosity show up in your body? Because I like when again talking about, the 10-year-old or the 10-year previous version of you, having all the judgment. I'm like, well, I just pretty much laid out all my judgment right there. Um, but um, but again, when I tune into that particular energy, like I feel a lot of great, beautiful, heart opening energy of the person I was speaking of earlier. But there's their third chakra there. It is like the one that like helps them move through the world. It's like everything starts to get real clenched, and so there's it's not a full flowing energy that I feel. Um, and I'd have to sit with to decide, is that really what's going on with them, or is that how, if I were in that position, how I would be feeling? And so that's a piece of curiosity that I've gotta play with after this. But when you're talking about, like when you're entering it into a situation, do you tend to be more kinesthetic in how you're experiencing curiosity, or is it showing up as more of a mental exploration? Because I also have that great analytical capacity
Yes,
to
you do.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I think it's a both and it's kind of a tandem piece. I realize that the analytical cognitive part of me is very dominant. I also realize that the best part of me is the intuitive, energetic, kinesthetic part of me.
Mm,
And it's constantly a battle between here and here for me. And I think for most of us, it just shows up differently for different people. And so it's like my brain wants to be able to embrace certain things followed by data and structures. But my heart, my soul, truly knows what's right and wrong for me and truly knows where Paul is supposed to be at any given moment. And for me, I feel that in my chest. It's
Okay.
truly my chest that opens up. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's so much my heart as much as it's my entire chest. And one of the things that I've done in a number of photographs over the years, but it's also just a behavior for me, is to stand arms spread wide open, just absolutely wide open, almost like a Da Vinci pose sort of piece. And part of that is because when that chest is open for me, I know, I feel at my core that abundance. I feel that prosperity, feel that creativity in the most expansive way. And so often I will actually even get up in meetings and stuff and move my arms back, make my chest broad in that moment, simply to allow it to shine out, allow myself to bring in that energy, but also to put it out there in the world.
Hmm.
It's
I
a
wonder.
powerful way to feel through it.
Yeah, no, because like when you open your arms, you spread like that. First of all, you are allowing your heart chakra to expand, but you're also expanding your lungs. And I do think that many of us carry a lot of deep-seated grief in our lungs, that like sadness of what we could have been or what we think we should have been. Um, but I'm coming back to you dying. Because you told me in the questionnaire that you were 15 months old and that you had drowned and were declared dead. I need to know more. This was not a part of our conversations
It
at
was
the
not.
co-working space. So we need to know more because I'm so curious about this now.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstance was I was 15 months old. I was at a family function. Our family lived, my extended family lived on the water in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay. Um, it was one of those things that sometimes happens at family functions. Who's watching the kids? Oh, I think they're watching, and they thought they were watching, and the other person thought they were watching, and the reality was nobody was watching the kids. And myself and my cousin wandered over to the beach, and he's a year older than me. And we were playing down there, evidently, and I wandered out into the water.
Mm,
And some time passed, and everybody started asking questions about, well, who's watching the boys? And they realized that nobody was watching the boys. All the adults were accounted for, and the boys were not accounted for. And they went running around trying to find where we were. And my cousin was standing on the beach, pointing at me, face down in the water, about 50 feet out into the bay, into the river. And obviously, this is a long time ago, many years, more than 50 years ago, and it was a race to call for the fire department to come. They got there, and I was not breathing. I did not have a pulse. I was actually declared dead as part of that experience. And because my father was the fire captain, although my father was not there at the time, my father was the fire captain. And so the paramedics did not want to be the one that said to the fire captain, hey, your son is dead, and we gave up on him sitting on the side of the beach. So they worked on me the entire way to the hospital, which was about 20, 25 minutes away. And just before they got to the hospital, they got the faintest pulse back. They had been doing CPR and such the whole time with zero response. And they got the slightest of pulse, which they then brought me back to life. I was in a coma for a period of time. My parents were told that I would never amount to anything. If I lived and came out of the coma, I'd be a vegetable. I would never amount to anything, and I would probably drop dead as a young child simply because of the level of trauma and such. People don't come back from this, was basically what they told my parents. at the time. And that created a whole bunch of different conditions and circumstances that really did shape uh, my childhood in a challenging way. But one of the best pieces that I've been told by my family, because I don't have any recollections of those days, one of the best stories that I have from it, because I think it really talks about the human spirit, was that my aunt, who was there looking for me and was very scared and very concerned, her boyfriend at the time thought that we should just give up. He's already been declared dead. Why are you people worried about this? Just accept the fact this kid is dead. And when he stated that, my aunt, who you would have to understand is tall, thin, not particularly muscular, hauled off, punched him, knocked him out on the side of the beach.
Knocked him out?
Knocked him out. And it really was a testament then, and really how I see that moment today is I'm not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not dead yet. There have been moments where I've thought it was time to die. I'm not dead yet. At 15 months, it was clear there's work for Paul to do. There's work for each of us to do in this lifetime.
Wow.
And I go back to that almost on a daily basis of reminding myself the work's not done yet. I'm still here. And as long as I'm here, there's work to be done in service to others. Are there days that I want to just get up and take care of Paul and just lounge somewhere, with an adult beverage in one hand and a book in the other and call it good? Yes. But my work is not done here. And I think when we have that sense of duty, that sense of purpose, that whatever circumstances we've had in our life, good, bad, and ugly,
Mm-hmm.
that we're here to get something more done. You're here on purpose. That creates an opportunity for us to say, okay, what can I do in this moment? How can I show up better? And that's what drives me. That's how I take those moments, some of that crud, if you will, of this lifetime. And certainly there's been lots of ramifications of that incident that happened when I was just over a year old. I can either let that hold me down and say, oh, he's this feeble kid that will never amount to anything, who will never have good cognitive processes in his brain. And I can listen to all those stories that the doctors told my parents, and I can look at all the limitations that they tried to impose on me. Or I can say, guess what? You're still here. Get up. Let's go. We got work to do.
That's a good message, especially for those people that are working with you, that, sorry, no excuses, dude. You're still alive. You got a pulse. So shush. Let's get
Yeah.
to work. But it does explain why your parents probably diminished your curiosity, because you tried to kill yourself the first time when you tried to explore the lake. So they're probably thinking, well, if we let him really go and explore, he'll be successful this next time. So I get where they're coming from for sure. I know that you have a beautiful daughter, and that you've probably not done that to her. Um, what advice would you have for parents who may have had a similar situation happen? Because your story is sadly not um, unique. Yours had a happier ending, but for also any parent who had that experience of a child coming close to dying. Obviously, we cannot deal with the grief of those who actually did lose their children, but for those who've had those kind of scary experiences, what advice would you have for them?
It's really a mindset, perspective of victim versus opportunist for this lifetime.
Say some more.
So we can look at things as they've happened to us, that we're beholden to the circumstances, that we can't change things, we can't do things. We can listen to that rhetoric and we can believe it. And I think each of us does to greater and lesser degrees. It's easy to go there. Even in myself, there's days where I'm like, I don't have that ability. I can't do that. That's what other people can do or should do, or those sorts of things. But if we can move that perspective, going back to where we started the conversation, be able to look at that circumstance from a different angle. Okay, you have a limitation. You have a limitation in that way. What can you do? How can you make something out of this? Okay, you might not be able to be a pro athlete. Can you go be a rocket scientist? Can what else can you do? And I think that the challenge is too easy. It's too simple to simply stop. It's too easy to say, poor me. It's too easy to say, here's the list of limitations. Isn't that good enough?
But sometimes don't you think that there is value in rest? I mean, your
Oh,
comment
definitely.
about yeah, your comment about just sitting down with an adult beverage and a book, I'm thinking, gosh, that sounds like an amazing Sunday afternoon.
Yes. And trust me, I'm a huge advocate of self care. And I think self care
Okay.
comes in a lot of different ways for people. It's that piece of, are we in that mode all the time? Is that our base
Okay.
mode?
There
Is
you
that our
go.
dominant? And I think that too often, even when we start talking about our kids and such, it's less about, can they do more? Can we empower them to be more? So it's not so much, are they in 26 activities right now while they're in school or whatever. Are we giving them the environment to be able to expand, to think with innovation, with creativity, to ask themselves, am I being the best version of myself in this moment? And if not, do I want to take that opportunity to be more?
And to explore. I do think that exploring the variety of activities and even friend groups, it's scary at times when they start exploring things that really are not beneficial to them in the long run. And there's still that whole free will piece. Um, so, Paul, we are getting close to the end of our time together. I just wanted to thank you for this incredible interview. There's so many juicy tidbits that you saw me making all these little notes over here. Um, the last question I'd really like to explore is, other than the fact that, the whole dying as a toddler thing. Actually, real quickly on that, did you ever go back to those firefighters as an adult and say
I've
thank you?
not gone back to those firefighters, but no, I've never gone back to those firefighters. The interesting piece to all that is that my family assumed that I would be afraid of water, that I would not like the water, that I would shy away. And it's actually been quite the opposite. Water has been my great comforter throughout this whole life, has been a huge protector of
Hence the
me,
lighthouse.
and hence my lighthouse, all the way up, lighthouse. And it has been an important part of my life, and so I've embraced the water. I've embraced serving first responders. I do a lot of work with first responders,
Okay.
and such. So yes, in an indirect way. But did I ever find out who those men were that came, and the paramedics and the firefighters and such? I didn't. And it's a good challenge from you to figure out, what can I do to honor them in a different way.
That would be so fascinating to go back and find them, because I am sure they did not forget that experience to
Probably
be
not.
able to bring a little one back from the brink. That's pretty impressive. Um, So again, that would definitely kind of qualify in that whole phoenix moment, where you rise from the ashes. But what about as an adult? What kind of what has been one of the hardest things that you've had to come back from? And what advice would you have for others who are finding themselves in maybe not necessarily the ultimate dark night of the soul, but if they're finding themselves in that lower level energy motivation space, what would you say to them?
Hmm. I certainly had moments, and we don't have enough time to go into detail about some of those
Maybe another
specific
time.
stories for my adult life. But I will say this: there are dark moments, and sometimes they're really, really dark moments, painful, hurtful, shameful sort of moments that enter our life. And it's easy to let those box us in, to define
Mm.
us, to allow them to define us, to wear them as our identity. I'm a bad person. People will never see me the same again. All those kind of fatalistic things. I'm stuck. I'll never get unstuck sort of mindsets. That's easy to go there. It's easy to stay there. There's lots of things around us that would reinforce that.
Yeah.
The piece is we've got to find a way to dig deep and look through different eyes, look through a different set of lenses. Sometimes we can feel that desire, but it just seems too daunting. Oh, I want to feel better. I want to look different. I want to be different. Don't know how to do it. That feels really hard. I don't even know where to take the first step. That's what I said for years when I was in the darkest of darks of my adult life. I think those are the moments that having mentors, having coaches, having trusted friends is really important. And not because they can pat you on the head. In my opinion, that's not a good support if they just pat you on the head.
It's the difference between being kind and nice. Sometimes the kindest thing in the world is a swift kick in the butt.
Exactly. And I truly believe, as part of my own coaching practice, if I'm not challenging people to be more, then I'm not doing my role.
Yep.
And I am eternally grateful for the mentors that I've had in my life, particularly my mentor of the past 10 years, for kicking me in the butt, for pushing me over when I felt like I was nice and confident and strong, so that I had to get back up, so that I had to brush myself off, so that I had to try something different and realize that all those stories that were going on in my head, all that noise between my ears, is just noise. And that I have the opportunity to choose to be a new person and to reinvent yourself. I used to think that was very cliche ish
Yeah.
a lot of years.
So
It's
how
not.
do how do you work with people in that way now? Are you've got a assume you've got your coaching program, the paulraspa.com, correct? I'll go ahead and I'll put that in the show
True.
notes. What can they expect to find when they go onto that website?
That's really just about the different types of work that I do. That's all that I have on my
Okay.
paulraspa.com. So I'm a very organic person. I don't believe that one size fits all for business. One size does not fit all for people. And I am a passionate coach that really looks at how do we leverage who we are, our uniqueness, if you will, our soul identity as a person, and use that and leverage that. And so I do that through one-on-one coaching. I do that through group coaching. I facilitate a men's mastermind and separately a women's mastermind to help folks dig through some of that mess at a very individual level based on who they are, where they want to be, and more fundamentally, how they're built energetically. Because if we can do that, then we're not fighting against ourselves. On the business side, I do the same thing with companies and projects. I help them
Mhm.
to identify their identity, who they are at the core of their company, of their product. And then we say, how can it be more? And often that's in a consulting arrangement in those circumstances.
Wow, cool. Okay, so for anybody who's needing some of that work, this is a great person to start with. Um, I encourage everybody to go check Paul out online. And of course, I've got beverlybeal.com, and there's a again starting point, kicking off point for a lot of the things that I do, because we both clearly are coaches and consultants. We come at things from vastly different perspectives, and everybody has that value. So, Paul, thank you so much for this time that you've given us. I
Thank you, Beverly.
cannot.
This has been great.
This is. I look forward to chatting with you again on maybe some other of your endeavors. And until then, thank you again. We'll see you in a couple weeks for the next episode of the Curiosity Solution.